years old, I think, or 3 years old, and moved to Dubai. I did all my schooling in Dubai. It's an Indian school, of course. And then I never wanted to. A lot of my friends in school from that stage only they applied for their undergrad courses, etc. in foreign universities. I say foreign universities, I mean outside of India. Myself and a few others, we wanted to study in India, and I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer primarily because of a TV show. Now I'm talking about 2005, 6, 7, and the then famous TV show on lawyers was Boston Legal. So that was a show I was watching it. Currently watching. It's much better than Suits. So I wanted to be a lawyer, and I wrote CLAT. I was the first CLAT batch, and I ranked my references. I think I put NLS Bangalore first, Nalsar second, and NLIU Bhopal is number 3. The reason I did that was because that's what the India Today rankings same copied same ranking in my. So when the results came out, I wasn't good enough to get into Bangalore, wasn't good enough to get into Nalsar, so I got into Bhopal. 2008 I came here, and I've got to say I had a wonderful time. For 5 years I spent over here. Obviously, initially it wasn't easy coming from Dubai to Bhopal, but very quickly I made some very good friends and I fell in love with the city. That particular love affair, I guess, remains in place in today. After I graduated in 2013, actually before that, now throughout the time I was in law school, I always wanted to be a litigator. Alright. Suddenly, towards the end of my 4th year, I was like, I should first try and see what a law firm life is like. So, first I was offered a job with PwC's tax litigation team. I think I mentioned that I was interested in tax. That was the subject I was most interested in, income tax. And in fact, I had written for this, I don't know if they still do this Nani Palkiwala research paper competition. Yes. So I had written it 1 year, I come second, another year I come first. So that's what I did, and then I was subsequently interned at Adhitya Associates and then got a job over there, thinking that I'll be joining their international tax practice. So 2013, when I left law school, I joined Adhitya, and I started out in the international tax practice. There were about 6, 7 other people who, it's a smallish firm. It's not like one of these factories like, CAM, SAM, Ketan, Chinese, or SNP, or any of these guys. So there were only about like 7, 8 people in my cohort. And it so happened that everyone else who came was also very, very well versed and focused on tax. And I think it's safe to say that a lot of them knew more about tax than I did. So very quickly from tax, they sort of nudged me towards doing investment funds or fund formation, right? And I thoroughly hated fund formation when I started it. Right? Think of it from my perspective. I had joined this firm and I joined this team to do tax. And now instead of doing tax, within a month you were saying, no, you're not going to do tax, you're going to be doing this new thing which I had absolutely no idea. I was clear in my head, I never wanted to do M&A, I never wanted to do general corporate stuff, and suddenly they're throwing me into this fund, so I have to do fund formation. The good thing about fund formation, as I realized at that time, is that a lot of it was just purely contractual. So if you knew your principles, your broad principles of contract, then, and if you could basically get your drafting right in a fairly logical, sensible manner, you'd sort of done one half the battle. You needed to know a little bit of securities, AIF regulations had just come out in 2012, I joined in 2013. So it's kind of similar to this Data Protection Act now. It's just come out in 2023 and we're just talking about it. In a year's time, there'll be a lot more to talk about. So I got heavily involved in fund formation. In about a few months, I discovered that I actually had an instinct for it, I had an knack for it. A lot of it was mathematical based, and math was a subject that I always liked. So, so all of that sort of came together, and I had a good time in Nishit Desai Associates for 2 years. Of course, you don't completely get divorced from taxation at a firm like Nishit Desai Associates. Everyone is expected to know a little bit of tax, so was I. So I retained that knowledge and I tried to keep current with it as much as I could. So 2 years at Nishit Desai Associates. It was a very hectic time. It was hectic because the person who headed the fund formation practice at Nishit had just left to join Khaitan. Some of you may know of a very senior partner in Khaitan called Siddharth Shah. He was previously at Nishit Desai Associates and he left to join Khaitan. So whatever was left of the funds team was a team that I ended up working with, and we had to pick up a lot of the work that had been left behind. So it was very, very hectic. I came very close to quitting a number of times. If any of you do join some of these hectic jobs, I would urge you all, even when you get this feeling that you want to quit, I would urge you guys to at least complete 1 year before you take any such decision to leave. After 1 year, it's fine. So, in my second year at Nishit Desai Associates, I said, look, I need to be doing something else. And that's when I applied for my master's. Right? Initially, my plan was to apply to 3 law schools. The 3 law schools were Harvard, Columbia. I'm not sure whether it was Georgetown or NYU, one of the two. It would have been Georgetown because Georgetown has a great tax program, and that's what I was doing. Harvard and Columbia I was applying to only for the name recognition. The way this actually played out in practice was any of you who are applying or who intend to apply for done basic research on the LLM program will know that you need to submit the application, I think, for Harvard on the 1st of December of the year, and I think for the other law schools on the 15th of December or the 30th of December. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's 30th November. Really not clear. It just so happened that that particular quarter, so October, November, or September, October, November, was extremely busy for me. Extremely busy. It was a miracle that I got any personal time to myself to do any work for myself. And although my intention was to apply to 3 different law schools, I only had time eventually to apply to 1 law school, which was Harvard. And I thought to myself that, to hell with it. If it works out, then great. If it doesn't work out, then in the following year I'll apply to other law schools. And then December 1 went, and then the new year started. That's 2015. As things turned out, eventually the 1 law school that I applied to, which was Harvard, eventually accepted my application and I was admitted. I was very happy, not about getting admission into Harvard, but about getting to leave my hectic work life in Nishit Desai Associates. So 2015 August, by the way, this gap between putting in my papers at Nishit Desai Associates and going to Boston, Massachusetts was one of the happiest times of my life because I had absolutely no work to do. I was essentially on notice period and they were gradually taking away more and more work from me. So I didn't have much work to do. I was still collecting a salary and I had something to look forward to. So I had a bunch of free time to myself. If any of you find yourselves, the reason I'm saying this is if any of you find yourselves in that position where you've been accepted to a program and you have like this break period, make the most of it. That time will not come.
So do you think that being an NLIU student,
yeah,
you are an Harvard application?
It helped me with my Harvard application. Definitely it helped me. I mean, NLIU is one of the reputed national law schools in the country. There have been various other people who have gone to not only Harvard but also other famous Ivy League schools in the US and even non-Ivy League schools. There are a number of them as well. And I think so. The way it works is that once some of the students have got in, the admissions board over there gets comfortable with the kind of people who are making recommendations. They get comfortable with the institute. They see the performance of the students who come in from This is all kind of data processing, I guess. They see the performance of the students and they sort of track it with the parent university. Parent university is NLIU, and I'm sure it creates a favorable impression. And even independent of that, I think like a law school like NLIU is definitely held in very high regard in Ivy League schools, including Harvard Law School. So August 2015, I reached Boston, Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is where Harvard Law School is. I spent 10 months over there. It was some of you during the break period or even otherwise had asked me about what that experience was like. It was a great experience. It was also a very testing experience. It was testing because, unlike over here, I don't know how things work over here these days, but in my time, it was possible for you to get by a semester, or a course in a semester, without actually having to read or study every day. Something like that was just impossible, out of the question. And how you had to like read your curriculum every day so that the following day when you went into the classroom, you at least knew what the teachers and the students were talking about, even if it's not something that you could yourself fully contribute. Although in some cases it was possible for us to also add to the discussion. December of 2015, December, Jan, Feb of December 2015, Jan, Feb of 2016. For the first time I experienced what a New England climate was like. Right? These are the severest winters that you can think of. I thought Delhi was bad, but then going to a place like Boston, I really understood what it means to feel cold. It's a good thing that they have central heating in all of their rooms. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for one to have really survived. But survived we did. Then around December, initially my plan when I went to Harvard was that okay, I'll finish this 1 year. I say 1 year, but actually it was 10 months. Okay? I came in August and I think I left at the end of May. So initially I thought at the end of May I'll come back. I'll come back to Delhi and I'll pursue a career in litigation. This is what I wanted to do. Somewhere during the course, I thought to myself that look, I've spent all of this massive amount of money on this program, and the least that I can do is try and recoup some of the costs. And so I applied to various law firms and even non-law firms like Big Four accounting firms to see if anyone would hire me. I must have applied to 3 dozen, 4 dozen odd places, and I was rejected left, right, and center. Right? Through a connection of my father's, I was introduced to a law firm called Herbert Smith Freehills. And Herbert Smith Freehills has, I don't know how many of you have studied this or paid any attention to this, but it has one of the, I would say in fact it has the best listed investment funds practice in England, certainly. And they were just slowly starting to build their private funds practice. Private funds is what I had been doing at Mr. Associates. What I mean by investment funds or fund formation, that's what I was doing. So it turned out that they needed someone with my profile in terms of experience as well as academics. At the same time, I had befriended one of my professors at Harvard who was teaching me investment management law and who had worked with the SEC Securities Exchange Commission, which is the US's version of SEBI. He was a director of investment management, so that's one of the top leadership positions in the SEC. And he had just left the SEC and was now, he'd been lecturing us, of course, in law school, Harvard Law School. He was now looking to join private practice. He joined a firm called Corporate. I befriended him and he thought that my inputs in class were good or worthwhile or whatever. And when I told him that, look, I've been scouting for employment and no one is really interested in offering anything to me, he said, why don't you apply to Corporate? So whilst that was going on in parallel, the Herbert Smith was going on. It just so happened that Herbert Smith was a lot quicker in terms of processing my application, that turnaround time. And so once I had said yes to them, I didn't feel like saying yes to cook. You've got to be consistent. So I joined Herbert Smith. I went off to England in August of 2016. I joined their corporate law group. Their corporate law group has a lot of subdivisions. One of the subdivisions was funds. As I said to you, they had a growing listed investment funds practice. They were trying to build their private investment funds practice. I had met some extremely intelligent people, some people who really took the time out to mentor me. One of them is Shantanu Manani. Has anyone come across this this blog called India Corporate Law? No. But he was one of the people who was helping or assisting with that blog. It's now, I think, being handled only by one person. So, I spent close to 2 years over there, and again, I think in early 2018, I thought, okay, now I've had this experience. I think it's now time for me to come back. Just as I was thinking that, some recruiters got in touch with me, and they said that a law firm called Simpson Thacher and Bartlett was looking to shore up its investment funds practice. So right now, STB or Simpson Thacher is in the world of investment funds. It's as great a workplace as you can hope to find because they do the best quality of work in investment funds. They regularly set up investment funds of like, when I joined, there were like funds being set up of like, I guess, 4 billion euros, 8 billion euros, 10 billion euros. By the time I left, they were setting up funds of 20 billion euros, 25 billion euros. So, and like, these were like huge, massive operations. So I thought that, look, I need to get, like, I just at least need to know what it's like. So I dropped the idea of coming back at that stage and I joined Simpson Thacher, knowing full well that at some point I was going to leave and come back to India. So I spent a year and a half at Simpson Thacher, where I learned quite a lot. About a lot of things, not just about funds, also about like personal discipline and processes and things like that. In the first week of January 2020, I put in my papers. So I think the first Monday of the year I put in my papers. I told them that I'd serve out a 3-month notice period and then leave. So I went through January, I went through February, I started March, and we all know what happened towards the 3rd week, 4th week of March 2020. My partners over there told me that, look, if you're really thinking of going back to India at the end of March, it's best that you leave now because they may not let you come in after that. They were right. So on the 17th of March, I left London with 2 suitcases. And I must have left like 4 or 5 behind. At least 3 or 4 behind, because I had a lot of things. But I spent 3.5 years over there. So I left London and I came to Delhi on the 18th of March. 22nd is when they closed the border. And I spent 3 months essentially doing nothing during the first 3 months of the pandemic. In July 2020, I joined the Solicitor General's office. By the way, I'm not the only one who is from the Solicitor General's office. One of my juniors, obviously someone who's very senior to you guys, is Kadu Agarwal, who's also in the SG's office, and he's done really, really well for himself. I was in the SG's office for nearly about a year. And then in July 2021 is when I said, look, it's time for me to go independent and to set up an independent practice. So I set that up. With almost like no real client to show for. But a lot of this is about staying the course. So I stayed the course, and then over time, you start with like some very, very basic matters, and then it gradually picks up. At least that's the idea. So that's what I've been doing. I guess last month, a couple of my friends, one of them is Rajat Mittal, who was my senior in law school, 3 years my senior. He and Gautam Swaru, with whom we both started out at Mission Desai Associates the first time. The 3 of us set up not a law firm, we set up a law chambers because we want to be clear that we don't do the general sort of advisory work that law firms tend to do. We are focused exclusively on disputes and litigations. And the only sort of, I guess, advisory work that we do is stuff that is adjacent or ancillary to the disputes work of view. So I guess that's a very brief summary of my life and career. Now, if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to take them. And then once we're done with these questions, we can take for lunch.
So, how did your personality change after graduating from NLIU to PART?
I think one, definitely I became someone who was more confident. We go through a 5-year process. It starts off in the first year where you're totally unsure of yourself. Or you've come from high school, and at high school you might have, when you're in 12th standard or whatever, you probably have a certain opinion of yourself. And you come to law school and all of that is basically reduced to nothing. So you start from scratch again. And then over the process you again rebuild yourself, you rebuild your confidence, you revisit some of your values. So all of that happened. I think I was also, because I had lived in Bhopal, and for me it was the first time I was living apart from, away from my parents. But I had not gone to boarding school. Those of you who have, I think it's a really, really valuable experience that you have. So the first time I was living, and then by the way, since I came to Bhopal, I never got back to living with my parents. So I think it definitely left college more confident, a more educated person, not just in terms of legal training, but also about the world and kind of such. Yeah, that's how I would say my personality was when I left. Just remember that when you start, each time you start something new, you again go through the process of like starting from scratch. It happened to me when I started at esteemed, but I thought I had won all these research paper competitions on tax, and then I come to a tax law firm and it turns out that everyone knows more than me. So that humbles you. Then you go to a place like Harvard and you're like, oh, you think that this I've been like good enough to get into a place like Harvard, and then when you get in, you find that there are like tons of people at least as smart as you, and several others who are even smarter than you. That's again a humbling experience. You leave that, you join Harvard Smith, saying, okay, look, I managed to get this great job for myself. You find that there are people who have been doing this for years now, and they are much better. So I left London and I came back to Delhi to start a career in litigation. You find that there are people who have been doing this for years, and just litigation is something, for example, which experience is something that it counts for everything, but it counts, I would say, even more so in a field like litigation. You find that there are people who know so much more about some of these practices than you. So each stage of life, each time you do something new, it is a humbling experience. I guess everyone has the option of choosing not to go through that humbling experience. It's very easy, for example, to just say that, look, I could have said, in London I had a very, very comfortable, extremely comfortable life. I could have just said that this is great, I just continue doing this, at some point they'll make me a partner, and then I just keep rising through the ranks that way and I'll see where this takes me. That would be one way of living my life. For better or for worse, I decided to not do that, and I decided to upend my life from that and do this. So you go through these experiences, and I think each experience is something that teaches you something. NLIU Bhopal was one of those experiences which I think taught me.
What do you think your best was that got you into Harvard?
I think what I was able to show them, maybe 2 or 3 things. I think one thing I was able to show them was that although I was a fairly junior associate at Adhitya Associates, I was given a lot of responsibility and I was handling a lot of things which ordinarily would have been handled by, let's say, a partner of any other law firm. I was doing some of those things by myself. And like I told you, the reason for that is because there was a fund formation team in Mission, and 80% or 85% of that team left and joined Kaitan. So we were left with 15%. So we didn't have a choice. I'm sure if the original team was there, I would still be doing basically just a junior associate's work. But that was the position I found myself in. So I think I was able to communicate that to them. The second thing I think I was able to communicate to them was that, look, Harvard is generally a very liberal institution, and they just expect that most of the people that apply to them will have generally speaking, a liberal leaning. My politics was slightly different, and I was not afraid to sort of put that down on my personal statement. I think they would have been like, okay, cool, so this guy seems to have a different bent of mind, let's do that. Maybe that's something. I think I had good recommendation letters. One of them was written by Dhaka ma'am. One of them was written by Rajshekhar. I don't know if he's still on campus. He used to teach us economics and law of economics. Both of them knew me very well. And I got a good work recommendation as well. And I think I had a good personal statement. And that's because academically, if you were to look at the rank list in my class, what happened was first year, second year, third year, and the major part of fourth year, I always stood in the top 10 somewhere, either 7th or 8th. I think I was 8th. Right? And you've got to remember, my class was a class of maybe 75 to 80 students, out of which I think around 57 were girls and then there were 27 guys or something like that. I don't remember the exact ratio, but it was some sort of a very skewed ratio. There were like 2 girls to every guy, every boy in the class. So from ranks 1 to 10, there would always be like around 9 girls, and maybe I was the solitary boy on that list. And then I decided to bunk a trimester. We had a trimester system now. I decided to bunk a trimester. And then from that point on, when I had to write complete exams. From that point on, when I came back, I think I was 12th. By the time I finished 5th year of college, I ranked 12th in class. So it couldn't have been like I had sterling academics. And everyone else from the Indian cohort at Harvard were like either first in class or second or top 5 or something like that. I must have been one of the few guys who was outside of the top. So I don't know. Does that answer your question about my US plan? You got to ask them. Yes.
So like your work then, you say now you are practicing on your own, and you also are experienced working in different things.
Yeah.
So then, like, what is the basic difference if by working in India and like having worked in a country like England? Maybe like work balance, right, or like the nature of work is again.
Yeah. So you cannot categorize it as working in India versus working in abroad. What you can say is what is the difference between working in a law firm in India and working in a law firm. So you compare two sets of apples. You don't compare apples and oranges. The reason I bring that up is because in addition to working in law firms, I've also now spent 3 years as a litigator. It's a different experience. And none of those 3 years, by the way, has been with a law firm. Right? I've been associated with a couple of law firms. I've been on retainer with a couple of law firms, but that was all with the principle that I am running my independent litigation practice and I'm sort of doing this for you because of my specialized knowledge in investment funds. So I would say the experience in, generally speaking, in Indian law firms, I guess I can comment also about other firms because, as I said, my wife is a partner in one of I guess what would be called as a big law firm in India. I think in a lot of ways it's very unstructured. I don't think a lot of people in Indian law firms really care for work-life balance. Some people do, some teams do, some teams don't. The teams ultimately depend on who the partners are. But more than the work-life balance thing, I would say that a lot of it is like unstructured, particularly when it comes to the structure that you would look for as an associate. I think the structure that you would look for in a number of things. One of the things that you would expect to see some structure in is in your training and your development. So I think there's maybe a little less structure around those things in Indian law firms. There's certainly a lot more structure around those things in English law firms, and to a lesser degree in US law firms. There is reasonably well-enshrined concept of work-life balance in the foreign law firms generally. They will insist that you should take a holiday, and a lot of firms will also say that when you go on holiday, we don't want to bother you, we don't plan to bother you. They tend to respect that, I would say. I think the level of professionalism is of a very high standard in foreign law firms. It's also of a reasonably high standard in Indian law firms as well. I think I should be fair about that. Now, in contrast, if I look at something like litigation, I did not do litigation in England, so I can't speak about that. But from whatever I've heard, again, it's a very structured space. But if I think about litigation in India, I think it's a significantly more unregulated, unstructured space. You've got to sort of really carve out a niche for yourself. That in itself is a process. But it's a very interesting process. And if it's a process that you can commit to, if it's a process that you like, then I think it's something that you should pursue. Obviously, doing litigation in a firm is slightly more structured than sort of being by yourself, running an independent chambers, running an independent practice, and trying to figure out.
What are the learning approaches that you use in Harvard and NLIU?
I think some of the things that they do at Harvard, they already do over here. Right? Like the case method, for example, where they take you through the case flow and they have it analyzed. I think, one of the things I thought was lacking in my time, things may have changed now. One of the things that was lacking in my time, I thought was there was not enough currency between what was being taught in the classroom and what was happening, what was happening in practice at the law firm level. Particularly, say, in a field like corporate law. I don't think the things that we were taught in the classroom were enough to hold someone in good stead in a law firm. I think that is something which Harvard has been able to, not just Harvard, a lot of institutions have been able to really address, because they believe that they need to be informed by what is happening in the practice, and they do this through a number of ways. One of the ways they do this is by constantly having practitioners come and deliver lectures. A number of my courses, for example, the ones I did, were taken by people who were in the actual practice. So they were in a position to talk authoritatively about what was happening on the field. Not all of it was theoretical. The other thing that they do is they also encourage their professors, the purely academic professors, to actively engage with the field and to sort of actively engage with corporations and to see what was being done in practice. So that way that way they kept themselves well informed of what students should be taught. That's what I would say. Yes.
Sir, so the LM course that you pursued at Harvard, do you think it added some value to you as a person or a career?
Yeah, I think it definitely added value in the sense that it maybe opened some doors which would otherwise have not been open. Right? It also added value because it made me a more keen student of the law. As in, a lot of people, when they graduate from their basic undergrad law school, will just say that, look, I'm not interested in taking time out to get myself updated about the law, to try and read up this new theory. I regularly, frequently take time to read up some, for example, a random case law, just to understand what happens. And I would attribute that to the training I had at Harvard. The other thing is that a lot of the courses I took were sort of multidisciplinary in nature. For example, I took this course on analytical methods of law. And the things I was taught decision analysis, I was taught game theory and analysis, basic contract theory, I was taught statistics and probability. I mean, these are things which I hadn't actually, of course, everyone does a little bit of statistics and probability in mathematics. But after I left school, obviously we don't do that in law school otherwise. But I think the fact that I now have those learnings as well puts me in a position where I can now look at things, I guess, in more than just one way. I think that adds value to the way I analyze things and see things.
So what were the difficulties you faced in first year of
First year of
NLIU?
NLIU. So I didn't know any Hindi, for example. I couldn't speak I couldn't speak a sentence in Hindi. I can now, obviously. I learned all of that over the year. I was a little homesick, I think. I initially in the first trimester, I could not really get a grasp of what was happening in the classrooms, the way we were going to be tested. I just had no idea of how all of that was going to work. Things like project submissions. I also could not get to grips with the way the administration worked. There are different kind of administration that worked back then. But all of these things, within a matter of months, I was able to get my head around. And by the end of it, I think I really, by the end of my first year, I was really having a very, very good time. I very quickly developed a very strong friend circle, both within my batch and across the batches. And I think that way I had a very good time. Yeah.
Common questions are which days in the campus was the handout day? Days which you like?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in my cluster in the boys' hostel. But I spent a lot of time on Skywalk, a lot of time in Nescafe, Candy, certain select parts of the culture, the big culture. What else can I think of? Yeah, these are the ones I'm going to talk about.
So,
Yes.
what are the changes that you have noticed from before when you were studying in NLIU and after coming here?
It's difficult for me to say because for two reasons. One, I've only been here for a few hours, and it's been such a long time since I left. So I don't remember what it was very like at this week. Yes.
Because are you in LLM significantly take too much chances to get foreign outcomes, or can one work there?
No, it is not. But it gives you a better chance than no chance, right? Basically. Actually, that's not true. I think some of the foreign law firms do invite you guys also to apply for training contracts and stuff. Yeah, if you're starting off with that kind of a disadvantage, yes, LLM does that. But you should not think of it as helping significantly. By the way, everyone will keep saying, each batch will keep saying that the college is really, become bad and student quality has really gone to the nose. Every batch says that. They were saying about our batch also, about our time in college. You shouldn't believe that at all. I think those of you who are serious about the law, interested in making a career in law, whichever, as a practitioner, whether it's as a litigator or as an academic, you should just focus on what you want to do. Oh, sorry, as a judge, you should just focus on what you want to do and devote time and attention to that. Achieving what it is that you want to achieve. You should be concerned about what the parties say about the state of college, the state of the student body. Don't blame any people. Yeah.
So, please give us some suggestions that we should find also the law student going for business.
Yeah. So I can tell you what I did. And, so one thing I did initially in my first year was I would try and I would do some independent academic reading of my own. I mean, that's not good. That's not a very serious activity in the sense. It's not like I downloaded papers and tried to read those papers. But I would just, I remember I was doing this in contract law, for example. I would just read up further than what had been done in the class. That kept me aware and at least interested in what was being taught in the class. That's something that you could do. The second thing that you could do is actually more academic oriented. Try and do some writing. I recommend writing because it forces you to do some research and it forces you to make an argument. Both of these things are invaluable. Generally speaking, these are invaluable tools for any kind of a lawyer, any capacity. both research and argumentation. So that's something that you should consider doing. I do encourage you guys to put forward competitions, debates. Writings are obviously significant to do that. Do definitely try and maintain a good academic score. And then I think a lot of you guys have become much smarter about this in the sense that you now do a lot of research about the places that you intern with. So you have a very good idea about who the partners are, what kind of teams they are, what you need to do to sort of qualify for an internship. You guys are a lot smarter about this than we were in our time, for sure. So continue doing that. If there's an area of law that you like a lot, I would say sort of pursue it aggressively. One thing that you can all do for yourselves is to shed all of these imagined or artificial barriers that you create for yourselves. These sort of invisible glass ceilings that all of them are from Bhopal, we are not on the same footing, the same background. I just throw that to the dustbin. Where you guys are, I can tell you guys are very good. You guys are very sharp. And that's the sort of attitude that you should have. Back that attitude up by doing some solid hard work, some solid reading. And I think that will be good stuff.
Decided to come to NLIU, huh?
Yeah, I gave it 2018 also.
अच्छा तो ऐसे ही आयोगे साइलेंट भी चले गए होंगे कितने पैर से भी आयोगे हाँ So Aditya, this is from our side.
Thank you so much.
So, say thank you.
Thank you.
And this is a copy of Constitution.
Thank you. Thank you so much.